So, hello, and thanks for inviting me to speak today on the campaign for nuclear disarmament and the impact of nuclear weapons on the climate. So a brief background for those not very aware of our work. I'm not quite sure, everybody here, are you familiar with C&D, or does anybody here not know what C&D is? Okay, well, for the people online, here's some useful information just to introduce you to what we're about. The C&D has been around for over 65 years, and we've been very vocal on our opposition to the presence of nuclear weapons in the UK and beyond. These weapons are unlike any conventional weapons, and we know that the use of these in any future conflict would be a catastrophe to the planet. Not least because of the human impact, such as the deaths, emotional trauma and long-term illnesses it would cause, but also because of the long-term impact on the planet. Now, one of the key phrases I want you to take away from today is war fuels climate change and climate change fuels war. Firstly, let's look at the first part of that phrase, war fuels climate change. So, in conventional war, this can be the destruction of land or the fuel used by planes. To learn more about this, I really recommend looking up the work of GCOMS and Scientists for Global Responsibility, who've released some really useful, insightful reports on military emissions. Some military emissions are sort of sidelined by government sort of objectives for improving the climate. Resources by GCOMS and Scientists for Global Responsibility are really, really useful. In a nuclear war, the environmental destruction is tenfold. So weapons themselves are pretty bad, but nuclear war and the use of nuclear weapons is really, really, really bad. There's even something called a nuclear winter, which sort of relates a bit more to climate change, which I'll explain now. For decades, scientists have warned of and modelled the climate disruption that would follow any nuclear conflict. After the explosion, smoke and dust from firestorms would block sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface and cause an abrupt drop in global temperatures and rainfall, leading to shorter growing seasons and decreasing overall agricultural production. The launch of just 100 Hiroshima-sized nuclear weapons, less than 10% of global arsenals, would release 5 billion kilograms of soot into the upper atmosphere, spreading globally and staying there. This would rapidly cool the planet. It's worth noting that nuclear weapons also harm the environment long before they are even used. Uranium mining, nuclear waste dumps, and of course the testing of actual nuclear bombs contaminate the earth and sea. Now let's look back at the second part of that phrase I mentioned earlier. Climate change fuels war. So climate change is affecting access to resources such as land, food and clean water across the globe. This is particularly significant in places such as Kashmir, which has long been a site of tension between two nuclear-armed states, India and Pakistan, and where there has been disagreements over the water from the Himalayas which passes through Kashmir on its way to Pakistan. In response to an attack on one of its army bases in 2016, the Indian government announced plans to accelerate the construction of dams in Kashmir, an action which Pakistan views as a violation of the bilateral Indus Water Treaty and an act of war. With extreme weather such as severe drought only set to increase with the onset of climate breakdown, alongside other recent escalations that are currently making news headlines, the situation looks set to become increasingly precarious as the two states seemingly move closer to a potential nuclear conflict, which would have dire consequences for millions of people on the subcontinent and beyond. I hope that this has been somewhat useful as an insight into how these two threats are interconnected, and thanks for listening.